Hello, friends! Welcome to episode 246 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sara.
I'm Rob.
How we doing, Rob?
I'm so going to unmute one of these times so they can hear you doing that.
Doing what?
The intro. So, just so you're all aware, while you're all hearing that, classic intro that is now almost 5 years old, that we've been using, we sit here and make fun of it, kind of lightly, because we've heard it a billion times, just as much as you get 246 times. But, the most recent edition of us, playing around with it and having fun is we do it as if cats were meowing to it. And it's rather adorable, honestly, to have us both doing it. It's kind of a duet we got going on, and it's fun. Yeah. It's fun.
One takes the high part, one takes the low part.
Yeah. So
I wouldn't even be embarrassed.
No, I think it'd be fun. Maybe we'll just slap it in there for one of the days.
Honestly, y'all are welcome.
Do we actually have a show on April 1st? That would be hilarious if I could squeeze it in that one.
No. Oh, yeah.
That'd be fun.
We've been threatening to do the April 1st show.
We really
for
have
the longest time.
Just spoof an episode completely.
We were gonna have some surprises. We've
had a lot of doctored ideas of surprises.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. We just never got around to it, and just never really thought
we fooled you. Yeah. We're terrible at that too. It takes effort. Extra effort. We're already doing enough.
It does, and the effort that we were going to do involved roping in a bunch of other people and stuff like that, and it just never really materialized.
No.
Wednesday rolls around and we're just we're just going to do a regular show.
We're here. We're doing this.
Let's just keep it simple.
Yeah, exactly. So, hi everybody.
Hi.
For those of us in the live, or those of you in the live chat, thank you for joining. We appreciate you being here. For those listening at home from the comfort of other things, either via MixLR or later tonight or Thursday.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. We always appreciate it. We've had a few new additions to the Discord, which I love.
It's been
wonderful.
Good seeing some new blood on the Discord.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody.
Yeah. We love having new people join in and ask questions and throw their ideas around. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun seeing some of the stuff come to fruition. We've got one of our listeners is working on a release, a TTRPG release of in a mini format, and it's fun watching it grow.
Is that the 24XX one that is it Hulu's doing?
I think Hulu's doing that one, yeah. And it's fun watching that come to life.
Yeah, and it's really good.
It's great.
The PDF for it is nice, short, sweet, but it's succinct. It's easy to understand and really well put together for it. Yeah.
No, I love seeing that kind of stuff and just people talking about topics that we've gone over months, years ago, coming back and hey, this is a thing that I'm working on, and it's I really appreciated this, and I got this, and I love it. It's fun.
Yeah,
it's wonderful to see. It's wonderful to see. Yeah. So, we didn't have any games.
No, I think we're
nothing special there.
There's no more stalling. We have to get on topic.
It's a long topic.
It's a bit of a long topic. And I think the origins of this topic kind of start probably a couple of years ago, and are entirely ongoing. That you and I, we like to stay on Reddit and such like that, on other bits of social media, to kind of pay attention to what the community is talking about,
where the pulse is.
Yeah, and one of the topics that I continue to see, and is as much as anybody who's a frequent listener of the show knows, I have several qualms with Dungeons and Dragons. It's my problematic X.
Right.
But I still stay in some of the D&D subreddits just because I like paying attention to what the community is talking about. And one of the things that I keep seeing in these subreddits is questions of my players foraged for mushrooms in the forest, and what should be the consequences of eating those mushrooms?
Yeah.
What things should I do to them? And then you have got a bunch of people chiming in have it, have one of the mushrooms eternally curse one of their bloodlines, and then they have to go on a quest to get it taken off, or have it turn them into something, or have it ensnare them by a fairy, and then now they have to try to weasel their way out of this contract that they've entered into, things like that. And to me, those threads always bother me on a fundamental level. And I think I kind of wanted to talk about that tonight.
Yeah, I think the alternative ones that I get are, my players did stupid or silly thing X. How do I punish them and get them back on track?
Yeah, that's another big one.
It's almost like using, in this case, I think the carrot isn't going to work. I want to go with the stick.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, like, I don't necessarily think that's the right idea to go. And secondly, they're having a good time. What's going on here? So
right, how have we ended up in a situation where we're looking at our players in our fun game, where we all gather, we take time out of our busy lives and get together, and we schedule this once a week, once a month, whatever, to do this, and we are using the word punishment to describe the actions we are engaging in.
Yeah, and it's almost like a coach mentality.
Yeah.
But I think it comes back and kind of stems from DMs having an adversarial relationship. I think that's it's a point of reference there. So let me step into like a little bit of why I think it comes around.
Yeah, sure.
Why are we intent on making consequences? Why are these important? And I use the word consequences not in the general sense, but in the negative sense.
Mm-hmm.
In most of the times I see this, I think the biggest reason overall is control.
Yeah.
DMs see, and I'm going to use control in quotes, but I think it's true still. Mm-hmm. Many DMs see that their games are theirs. That it's their story, their feeling, their choice on how it should be portrayed, because it's a crafted experience.
Yeah.
I want this to be gritty Dark Souls. My players are making fun of everything. How do I punish them? Right? Okay, it's your vision. Did you let them know that that's how you would really want the game to feel like?
Right.
How did that not happen? And this often leads to the DM screen coming up and dice rolls happening behind it and them being against their players. Mm-hmm. Because they're having to try and wrangle them back into this world that is presented before them in a very specific way, that they're not meeting the standards of the world.
Yeah.
So
I think there's also an aspect to it too where I don't think that a lot of storytellers realize that they're doing this.
Okay.
To give them kind of the benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
But at the same time though, I think what they're doing is they're thinking, well, I want my world to feel alive, and I want there to be, action begets consequence, and I want things to feel interactive and stuff like that. So I want them to feel like they can't just do things and not, have a pushback from the world around them.
Sure.
But, then you start getting into these things of like where those consequences are coming from innocuous places, or they're coming from the old roots of that adversarial DM relationship, where it's like, I'm not going to use the word punish because in my mind I'm not punishing you.
Right.
I'm making an interactive experience.
Right.
That is a negative consequence for a thing that you've done.
Right, exactly. Like, oh, you're stealing from, every single time you guys go into a new shop, you're stealing. Mm-hmm. So the consequence is now they know you're coming and the guards are watching you. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have a encounter ready the next time you guys go into a shop so that I can show you what happens to thieves.
Right, so I can
show you what happens to thieves in this world.
Exactly.
And it's like, okay, like, maybe just have a conversation.
Yeah.
If
that's just not something you want your players doing,
or if you think it's detracting away from the plot, right? Like, there's all kinds of reasons. I also tend to believe that a lot of this comes from this concept. Like, you and I grew up watching movies where the heroes could do ridiculous things, and the worst thing that would happen to them is their commander would look at them and say, I want your badge and gun on my desk.
Right, and they'll have it back by the end of the episode.
Exactly, because they're big damn heroes doing big damn hero-y things.
Of course.
So, like, that's kind of in the back of our psyche, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And as storytellers, we forget that thought that goes through things, that, in some stories, yeah, the heroes are going to knock out a half a block of, city, and total damage is exceeding $1 trillion because they just took on an alien race in the town.
Mm-hmm.
But the very next story that comes out of that storyteller might be that, yes, the government is no longer going to take that crap, and the first time you F up, they're going to sanction you and tell you you're not allowed to come and help anymore.
Yeah.
Because you're too damn dangerous, Wanda Maximoff. And we saw that in the Marvel movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, each movie was distinctly different about how it policed the heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the keys to that is that you kind of have to look at it from the lens of the world. It's not a matter of realism in any of that.
Mm-hmm.
We know they're superheroes. There's nothing realistic in there.
Sure.
But within the framing of it, like, Law and Order isn't realistic either.
Oh, God, yeah.
Right? But realism is high on their scale. But anybody who's in those, I'll use the term lightly, industries or services, will tell you that, yeah, that's not real.
Mm-hmm.
That person would literally be under indictment for what they just did.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. But there's gaps there because it's storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain exceptions to it. I think the second kind of flavor that comes into that is that if it's not real, then it's kids stuff. It's childish.
Right. We're adults, and we're here to play an adult game, and that means gritty realism, and that means things have consequences.
Exactly.
You can't just expect things to be handed to you.
Yeah, I actually found this quote and I liked it. It was there was a discussion literally on this topic on RPG.net, and I want to quote. I think it's Frivietti.
Frivietti, yes.
Yeah. I've seen that attitude before. It is a bad attitude. It predates the idea... predicates the idea of escapism as inherently childish. And it follows up by assuming that you get the same things out of escapism as a child that you do as an adult. It derives from an ethic that believes that things have to have value to be worth doing. And that value has to be measurable in specific ways, or else it's not real.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're basically saying is that there has to be a measurable realness, a value to what is being done there ethically.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's pointless. And that's not true. I understand it. I can get the framing behind that. But that's not true when you're an adult. The things, you can't reference it with the same inherentness.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same kind of learning experience. You can't take a child's book and compare it to, an adult book and say, you need to have the same values and ethics. No. Mm-hmm. I assure you, you don't.
Yeah.
I can point to more than a dozen adult books that have horrific ethics in them, and they're great stories because they're stories.
Yep.
They're not there to teach you anything wonderful value-wise.
Yeah.
And they're meant to be an escape. Mm-hmm. Something enjoyable. Something to reduce your stress. Something to make you think, maybe. Put you in a different setting. And those are all acceptable. We don't have to have role-playing constantly be a teaching tool to keep us ethically in line.
Nor do you need to earn your victories and your fun through pain and punishment.
I think you're making a point there as well, which steps right into my next one, which is that people who want to have power fantasies shouldn't be allowed.
Right, yeah.
That concept should just be cut short.
I see that so much, like, especially in Dungeons & Dragons discussions, where it's like, how do I stop my sorcerer from casting his spells and being awesome?
Yeah.
Yeah, last game session, he cast like 3 spells and utterly, defeated the encounter that I'd set up for them, and that was no fun for me. So how do I ruin his? I mean, how do I nerf him? I mean, how do I rein him in so that he can't, ruin encounters for me anymore?
Yeah, or even just players who take the time to craft a character that is min-maxed.
Efficient.
Efficient.
Yeah.
That follows the D&D trope of efficiency. Like, I am a class. I am a professional at my class, and therefore I am good at what I do, so I can beat things better.
Yeah.
Or I can do that one thing that I'm really good at better.
Because I don't want to be on the struggle bus the entire time we're playing. Yeah, I get that. So yeah, you get a bunch of storytellers who want to they can't tolerate that. You know, I even suffer from that a little bit. I think, you know, there's a little part of me that, like, when I set up an encounter, like, I have an expected level of difficulty for it. You know?
Right.
And there's an impulse I have to actively restrain. And hopefully I do a good job of it.
I think you do.
But I seriously have to actively restrain, like, not getting a little bit tilted when you guys demolish an encounter that I thought was going to be a little harrowing for you.
Well, and I think that's something to be said about the concept of powerful heroes.
Right.
Right, like, we always come back to... It does always come back to combat being a huge part of it. But really it comes back to challenge and the not true balance of games.
Yeah.
Because it's not. There's no congruency in balance.
Balance is a crutch.
That's right.
Yep.
I did want to throw this quote up before we roll into the end, or into the next section, and that was... When I was 10, I read fairy tales in secret, and would have been ashamed if I had been found doing so. Now that I'm 50, I read them openly. When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness, and the desire to be very grown up. That was C.S. Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. I think it's important to remember that one of the childish things is those childish views of adultism.
Yeah.
And that falsehood of, am I doing this as an adult should?
Yep. And
so.
Go ahead, just don't be ashamed of just having mindless fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It's fun.
And you know what? That is precisely, and I'm kind of glad you put that quote where you did, because that is precisely what keeps me reined in from getting bent out of shape when you guys do overpower one of my encounters, you know? It's because I look around, I'm like, oh man, that encounter didn't go as planned. And then I look up at my table full of smiling faces that are enjoying the thing that happened. I'm looking at the people who are enjoying the power fantasy of having rolled a 37 when they needed a 12.
Yeah.
And I go, you know what? Everything's going to be all right.
Yep. It's all going to be just
my
fine.
story will survive, and people will high-five each other at the end of the night. You know?
Exactly.
All right. So, I guess then this kind of brings up the wider discussion then of, like, where are consequences appropriate? What consequences are appropriate? Things like that. And, you know, how do you go? Can you go too far? Can you not go far enough? These sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think that's really our calibration point, you know, we can talk all about how, like, okay, well, it's dumb when storytellers do this; they shouldn't do that. But
right,
like,
just stop
without getting down to brass tacks and talking about why this happens and then what to do with that information. We're not doing anybody any good. So, when should DMs have consequences, and when should they not?
Okay, so let's start with some just a general question that I would put out there, which is, what is the environment and mood that you're trying to get out of the table? I think that's the first thing that most DMs forget to communicate. It's not discussed in session 0 when it should be, versus framing, like, what books you're allowed to use and what the rule sets that you're going to kind of frame up. Like, literally, like, what are we doing here? Yeah.
Set those expectations first and foremost of what sort of vibes you're looking for at the table.
Yeah.
Are you looking for that gritty realism where everything, you know, every action has a consequence, or are we doing something light and pulpy here, you know?
Yeah, or just straight up ask.
Yeah.
Because sometimes your players aren't wanting the story, and even after day 1, they might be like, yeah, this grittiness is too much for me. Can we change it, or do I need to step?
Right. And that's a perfectly valid question. And if you need to step, that's a perfectly valid response.
Yes.
Of, I am not enjoying the game. This is not a personal slight on you as a storyteller. You have not failed. We just have mismatched expectations. And the goal of everyone having fun at the table is not being met. So I am going to leave as not to drag the rest of the table down and waste my time trying to have fun with something that is not designed for me.
And I will say this. Not everyone, because there's a lot of people, well, just let it play out naturally at the table. They'll get used to how the world reacts, and that's how we'll gauge how the story will go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to flat out say it. I've played with storytellers at times and not known what the framing is.
Yeah.
I can't read them. It just doesn't come across. Likewise, I know a lot of players who just have a hard time with social cues, period, and can't read it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just not in their bailiwick of knowledge that they have.
And I feel like as a storyteller, like I'm the one setting the pace of that tone. My players are very, very responsive to the NPCs and the plot hooks and the actions and encounters that I throw out there. So I'm the one setting that tone at the table. If the storyteller walks in and goes, well, I'll figure it out at the table, that means you're riding on a ship with no rudder. So there's a lot of guesswork going on both sides of the table, and that's not good for anybody.
So the question then remains, how do you set a guidepost that isn't a punishment in that sense? Like, what is a desirable consequence, and how do you read that as a storyteller? Because I feel like they're going to have a reaction. That's what we're always used to seeing. Reactions are 90% of what we do here. And so it's a matter of, did they react positively to whatever you've got set out there, or did they react negatively? So whether it's a matter of the world reacting in a way that they're comfortable with, I'll give a good example of this. When you shot in the face a guy from the you were out, your character was on a ship, you were a sniper.
Yeah, his face was facing me.
Like, literally, he was facing you. You shot him.
My character's an engineer and a gunslinger,
and his crew basically just fell apart.
I saw a problem and I solved it.
Right, but everybody else had a problem around you with what had just happened. You had
Everybody started throwing the word murder out, and I'm not really sure how that worked.
Exactly.
Because my character was... Sara understands now. Sara didn't understand in the moment.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
Is that it wasn't clear within the framing of the story. I thought it was, because as the storyteller, I have full vision of the universe.
And I thought, pirates are coming to kill us. We should kill them instead. Wait a minute. I have a long rifle.
Right. How do I do this?
And I applied a problem-solving solution to the problem of pirates will kill you if you don't act.
Exactly. And in that, I learned as a storyteller that your reaction was not what I intended. Like, I was like, ooh, okay, Sara took this pretty hard. I need to have a conversation about this off camera, basically.
Yeah.
What happened in this? So that I can say, you're playing your character. I am fine with that. Let's frame what happened in the universe and what that meant. So I'm going to now create something that frames around your character. Are you comfortable with this? Is this can we make this into something that fits for your character? Because the events have occurred. I could retcon it. That's true. But I think it was important that it happened, because I don't think you felt like your character needed to take it back.
Sure, no. I mean, I felt like it was still a very in-character action. Like I said, she's an engineer and a gunslinger, and she saw a problem. She solved the problem.
Very logical.
It was no more of a harsh action or a bad decision for her than applying duct tape to a hull. You know?
Exactly. And so in that, it was a matter of how to apply the consequences and then reframe those consequences with the player so that they understood where it was coming from, and just balance it.
Yeah.
I gave your character kind of a little bit of scuttlebutt that was going on. I didn't, send cops after you.
Right.
That's not going to happen. But people are going to say, oh, there was this person on a ship who murdered this guy. Really?
Well,
yeah, amazing crack shot. Yeah, they call her the Bloody Girl. What Bloody Madeline? Yeah, that was it.
And then and the cool thing was, you put that out there and you gave me the choice then of okay, you've kind of got a reputation now.
Yeah.
What do you want to do with it? And I went, wait a minute, I've got infamy?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm leaning into this.
Yes. So that way it could become part of the world, and the others could see it as well.
Yeah.
They could decide if that was a direction they wanted to lean or not.
Yeah, sure.
So it's a matter of, do you incentivize that behavior? And I don't think I incentivized it.
No, I don't think you incentivize it, but we had you made it clear to me that what I did was outside of the tone of the game, and I did not fully understand the tone.
Yep.
And so once we talked about it, I understood. We rolled with the consequences as they were, but you lightened them. So like it wasn't the end of my character by any means.
No, yeah.
But there were some in-game repercussions for it and such like that, and then we took it from there.
Yeah, I do think that this does fit in the nature-nurture framework.
Sure.
In the sense that it was in not only your character's nature, but also just the nature of how you've been playing games at that point, of how you were going to react to it.
Yeah.
That was who you were.
But at the same time, though, you as the storyteller need to go against my nature of what I am bringing to the table, who I am as a role player.
Correct.
And nurture me with my, with how you levied the consequences, how you handled levying those consequences, to essentially teach me that's not the tone of the game. These consequences are what they are, but I also understand that this is this wasn't something that was done out of malice or anything like that, so we're going to just take it light, we're going to give it a nudge, I'm going to talk to you both in game and out of game, and we'll continue from there.
Exactly.
On good feet, you know?
Yep, exactly.
So when would you say it's inappropriate to give consequences?
Oh. Every situation's a little different. But again, it's also the framing of, since a consequence is supposed to be a teaching experience, you need to say what really needs to be taught. When are you teaching something, and when is it just an event that occurred?
Right.
When is it just funny that it happened? Like, I was reading about one in particular, which I thought was pretty funny, that framed it very well, is that someone was saying that one of their players, after killing a bad guy, that our series, like a group of grunts that basically they had encountered multiple times, he literally teabagged him. Like, just did some squats on him, was like, "That's right, we got you. And, like, right in front of a bunch of people, right? And he didn't, as the storyteller, he was like, I really didn't want that to be the feeling for the story. Like, I don't want, like, football level dances in the end zone because they got a point, in this case, murdered somebody.
Yeah.
So everybody at the table was laughing, though, and having a good time of it. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to retcon that they did that. But I am going to say that you did murder people outright in the street. And this is not something you guys have done before, so, the constabulary is going to show up and say, hey, guys, we're taking you in for this. You'll probably get off because these guys are bad, but we've got to take you in. And they were like, oh, God. And I think it was also wholly inappropriate that you defaced a dead body right in the middle of the street. So, like, that's a whole nother level of things.
It wasn't illegal, but we are disappointed.
We are exceptionally, like, the church is disappointed because you were defiling a corpse.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, I didn't see it as that. I was like, yeah, it still counts. It still counts. And they were like, oh, okay. And so they went to jail for it, and he just extended the story. But it gave him a point to basically set a appropriate. Now, there were people who followed that up saying, like, oh, no, if you need to hammer that down. If your players are just being silly at the table, you should have just immediately put them in shackles and put them into prison.
No.
That's an inappropriate level, a disappropriate level of consequence. You don't want it to be inconsistent with the world. What he did was consistent with the world. Like, hey, like...
Well, aside from the fact that, like, that's just a huge buzzkill. Like, where do you go in your story from you're in irons before a judge throwing the book at you in the criminal justice system?
There are only two people. Exactly. But the whole idea is that it can't be disproportionate from literally what the setting is.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to have, like, angels on high showing up, from the Paladinic Order saying, like, oh no, you have done evil.
Right,
like,
right.
Where did these guys come from? Why aren't they going after the bad guy?
But, like, okay, so let's back it up, actually, from that. Because like, okay, so a murder and a defilement in the middle of a busy street is one thing,
Right.
okay? But, like, a lot of the, like, kind of what started this whole discussion was things like, my players foraged for mushrooms in the wilderness. What should be the consequences of this? And it's like, guys, hold on, whoa. What do you mean? Why are we bringing the C word into this?
It's not something
They
that's
foraged for mushrooms in the forest, like
the whole chair thing in Critical Role, or the gazebo thing for that matter.
Exactly.
If you know the previous story.
You teach if you give inappropriate and disproportionate consequences to innocuous actions.
Yes.
Okay. All you are going to teach your players is that they need to be worried about everything, and they need to walk on eggshells through your world.
Yeah, the whole thing of like, hey, roll a perception check. Oh, you don't see anything. Okay, now I'm sweating bullets.
Now I'm just paranoid.
Baldur's Gate 3
does that
so
lot,
like we're literally like, oh, all 4 of my characters all failed a perception check. Now I've got to reload the game because what the hell did I miss?
Right,
That's the feeling that you get. It's a tension. It sucks.
It is because it's like people start rolling dice and they're like, okay, so you ate these mushrooms and now like a fairy pops out and he's like, your bloodline is cursed forever unless you do this service. I ate some mushroom. Are you trying to tell me that I was wrong for eating mushrooms? Oh no, it's just a fun plot thing. Well, it's not fun for me anymore.
No,
you cursed my bloodline. Like,
yeah,
you know,
it's not appropriate because it doesn't even fit. The player was just doing some basic RP,
like you said, that like the chair scene from Critical Role. And I'm not saying that Matt Mercer, necessarily was wrong in fostering this, this sort of attitude at his table, but you describe a room as like there's a chair in the middle of an empty room. People are like, what's with the chair? Well, they got that suspicious and that paranoid somehow, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
that was a setup.
Is it because the last 3 times there was something innocuous, it bit them?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's a crying wolf, but in reverse.
Exactly.
So, okay. So the idea is that your players are aware that their actions they're taking is inadvisable, and it might have consequences.
Mm-hmm.
That's the framework that you're getting, regardless of whether it's good or bad, what they've learned. Because like you said, the last 4 times, it's been a mimic. Now they're going to poke every chest that they ever come to with a stick. That is literally an action that's inadvisable, and it has consequences. If you fostered that, that's what you've created. Mm-hmm. That's the consistency you're creating.
I mean, some of that might be the players bringing it to their table. So don't if that happens at your table, don't blame yourself instantly, but do look at what part you may have
First
played
off,
in it. That's
open
all I'm
up the player's guide, hand it to them, and say, what DM hurts you? Show me on the page where the DM hurts you.
Right.
Because that happens. That straight up happens.
Yeah,
they will bring that from another DM, and that other DM did them a disservice. Mm-hmm. But you still have to reset and reframe them within that.
Yeah.
So the idea is, have a conversation. Mm-hmm. Open that back up. Make sure it's out there. And also, meta a little bit.
Yeah, give them a heads up. Consequences might be on the way.
Well, not only that, like, their characters live in that world.
Yeah.
They know things you don't know.
That's the big thing for me, is that a lot of these discussions seem to be framed around the storyteller springing these consequences for an innocuous action on somebody.
Yeah.
And it's like, how am I supposed to know that you as the storyteller didn't want me to forage for mushrooms? Oh, no, I don't want you to... It's not that I didn't want you to forage for mushrooms. It's just that it's a fun interaction. Well, it's not fun when you're just screwing me over for doing something like finding food for us, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Give your players a little bit of a heads up of like, you guys are in a weird forest with known Fey activity. Are you sure you want to eat here?
Yeah.
Simple question. Yeah, if we, what happens if we don't? Well, you may take a point of exhaustion because you aren't well fed. Oh, okay. Well, do we want to risk eating mushrooms out of the fairy forest, or do we want to take our point of exhaustion? Well, I don't want the point of exhaustion. Let's eat some mushrooms. Okay. I've I've put it out there that may not be the wisest idea. You guys have made your choice at this point. Okay?
Right.
I don't feel bad about giving you, repercussions for that now.
At the same time, make it proportional.
Yeah.
Make it like, okay, you guys take it, and unfortunately, all of you sleep. Well, I'm an elf. I don't sleep. All of you sleep.
All of you sleep.
Like, whoa, okay. When you wake up, you're groggy. You definitely rested. Probably a bit too much. And, like, do you go so far as to say some of their things are missing or anything like that? No. That's disproportionate. But you might frame that, things happened. Maybe it took them longer. Maybe there was a consequence, but not necessarily a negative consequence to their actions. Progress the story, for God's sakes, in some way. Because they're interacting with your world. They're playing the game. And that should be rewarded. No different than someone going to the blacksmith because they want to do something there. Mm-hmm. Use that as a reference point. Enjoy it as a storyteller. Let them RP. Just make it part of the world.
Yep.
I think consistency becomes the second part of that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that every town needs to have the same laws and same rules and everything like that.
No, but there's something to be said about, like, okay, we did the exact same thing 3 game sessions ago, and you didn't bat an eye. You were laughing along with us, and now we do literally the exact same thing under the exact same circumstances, and you're telling us that was wrong, and you're, like, having us arrested by guards or whatever.
Avengers versus Civil War.
Yeah. It's the same thing of, like, so last movie we destroyed half of the city fending off these aliens and nobody batted an eyelash.
Right.
But now this movie, somebody accidentally friendly fires and blows up an office building or whatever it was that Wanda did.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden we need sanctions.
Yeah. Some of us need to go to jail or possibly worse.
Right. Some of us are now the villains of the story.
Yeah. And as long as everybody's on the same page that that's what the story is about, then you're okay. But, like, don't change midstream without reframing.
Yeah, your players, if that happens, then your players are basically just going to get confused why they're being punished, and they're going to draw conclusions that they're being unfairly treated.
Yeah, or that you're just being hypocritical.
Yeah, and honestly, like, something that I got taught a long time ago is that the appearance of impropriety is nearly as bad as impropriety itself.
I think it's a political statement.
Yeah, it is. Well, it is, and that's in the context in which I learned it.
Yeah.
But if your rulings at the table are inconsistent in a way that leads your players to believe that you are being biased at the table, they're just going to believe you're biased at the table.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to do a lot more harm than it is good.
Yeah.
So.
Owning up to moments that happen at the table, I think, is one of the hardest things as a storyteller.
Sure.
To be able to do, to say, like, I made a mistake last game session. I'm not going to retcon it, but this didn't work out, and it got me very frustrated, and I reacted poorly.
Mm-hmm.
Say it. That's okay. Teach your players that they can do that.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
It's all right to talk about those kind of moments, because we all come to the table with different things, and it will happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen at every table.
Yep.
So.
All right, so we talked a lot about the iron hand of consequences coming down on your players. What if you have a feather hand? What if you have paper hands?
Oh, where you just let things happen?
Yeah, or you just have too few consequences. So how does that look?
I would say the extreme is that you get walked over. Mm-hmm. Like, players just start doing crazy things at the table, like, to the fact of, like, oh, we just took care of the big bad guy, and you know what? Now I'm also just going to kick over, the building that's next to him to drop it on top of him, even though there's people in it.
Yeah, I mean that's a thing, but I think largely, though, like, I don't think we can start in and just being like, that's a bad thing.
Right.
Because just like too many consequences, too few consequences is largely vibes-based at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because for some stories, no consequences is the exact vibe you're looking for.
Yeah.
You want light, pulpy, hand wave all the collateral damage, for the fight with the rampaging robot caused.
Sure.
And you don't want to think about how every one of your superheroes' force bolts that missed was like firing a rocket launcher willy-nilly into a nearby office building.
Mm-hmm. Superheroes always.
Yeah, we don't want don't really want to think about that. We just want to fight the giant robot and fend off the aliens,
Yeah.
Okay, fine. That's fine. That's a no consequence, light, pulpy power fantasy, and that is absolutely a very valid story choice. And honestly, thinking about these things isn't generally fun.
No.
Like, here's you guys are superheroes, and there's a big robot invading the city. Cool, we're gonna fight it. Do you really want to? Well, yeah, it's a giant robot invading the city, and we're superheroes. What else do you expect us to do? I know, but you could kill a lot of innocent people. Like, if you really want to see exactly what I'm talking about, watch Invincible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very rated R.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't seen it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very rated, very good.
Yes.
But very, very rated R. And it is exactly what I'm talking about here with the superheroes with full consequences on.
Mm-hmm.
So the two polar opposites is Avengers and Invincible.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Right?
That makes sense. Because in one case, you've got someone who... a very poignant scene in Invincible where they're like, we need to take care of him. Get him the hell away from all populated areas. If you're going to fight this guy, but do it over the ocean. Do it in a giant unpopulated... Go to space. I don't care.
Yeah.
Just get him out of here.
Yep.
Get him to a place where we could literally hit him with an atomizer that will devastate 100-mile radius around him. Like, nothing needs to be near him, period, end of story. Whereas Avengers, it's like, oh, they're taking on New York, and there's a giant portal above it, and we need to nuke it. Excuse me? You're going to bring a nuke into New York City?
Yeah.
No. They're going to let the city be taken over and figure it out.
So, You want to take off and nuke it in orbit?
Yeah.
It's the only way to be sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, all bad ideas.
Right.
All bad ideas. But the thing is that there's also no direct consequences for those actions.
Sure.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
They're hand wave.
It's a light, pulpy story. Like, we're just going for this pure escapism.
It's escapism.
And that is what escapism is. We've been throwing that word around a lot, but that's what we're looking at,
Yeah.
It's escaping from the realities of action begets consequence, and it's just reveling in the power fantasy.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's super fun.
Yeah. There's
we love
nothing
it.
wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Escapism is lack of consequences by design.
It's healthy. It's good. You're not wrong or bad for wanting to be fictitious people in a fictitious world doing fictitious things that don't connect with reality in any way. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. You can have a touch of reality today because you were being good.
Aww,
on occasion.
A little reality as a treat.
But I will flat out say this here, is that if someone wants to have a power fantasy in their life, I think role-playing is an excellent place to put it, because the most dangerous thing between them and anyone else at the table are dice, paper, and their voice.
Yep.
And their voice can be managed through just conversation.
Yep.
But if they need to be releasing that kind of energy, I think it's a pretty damn safe place to do it in.
I'd rather somebody pretend to go on a shooting spree at a table with some dice.
Yeah.
And have it be a dark moment in the story than have it be a real thing that I see on the evening news.
Or even just express the way their character is feeling as a mirror to themselves at some level. An experience that they're trying to move through. That is a much safer place to do it in. Like, it's amongst other people.
Yeah, sure.
They're going to see the reactions. They're going to get their gauging. Mm-hmm. People are going to be like, okay. And that's fine. That's healthy. It doesn't mean do whatever you want.
Yeah, so it's fine and it's healthy within reason. And it's a big margin of reason for escapism, but you want to just be careful not to take escapism as implicit permission to go completely off the rails.
Yeah.
Like, just because the storyteller has glossed over the very real aspect of collateral damage doesn't mean all NPCs suddenly have plot armor. Mm-hmm. And that you should go out of your way to create more collateral damage.
We made the joke literally while creating this sheet was just like, after, stepping into the bad guy's lair, you're like, hey, what's your name? Ted? Do you have a last name, Ted? I'm not certain. Okay, you don't matter. Bang. Like,
Right.
like what was that? He doesn't matter.
He doesn't matter. There's no consequences in this game.
Yeah.
What?
Exactly.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And that's I there's a level of that, and I think context has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, it does. Context and tone and
Like,
and
I love Venture Brothers.
Mhm.
I think Venture Brothers sits directly between Marvel and Invincible.
Mm-hmm.
It sits in that weird spot where it's like, yeah, there are villains, but even they know there are like rules.
Yeah,
You don't just do this. Like, you know, we have some guidelines to follow. There's a reason why we use darts and our guns don't have scopes on them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's things that we do to make the vision of what this is supposed to be like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, somewhere a little more grayer toward Avengers is you've got, like, you know, Phineas and Ferb's Perry the Platypus and Doofenshmirtz.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they literally paint out the lines of where that sits effectively.
Yeah,
But at the same time, like, that's what you're doing with your players in that context. You're setting that framework for them so that they can feel comfortable to have their escapism. Mm-hmm. And everyone can sit there. And sometimes that needs to be adjusted a little bit, that context, because of comfort levels at the table. But it has to be available there. It has to be realistic in that sense of, or not realistic, but consistent.
Yes. So what do you do if you, like, legit do want to have some realism at your table, and you're not looking for the escapism, and then you've got too few consequences?
Well, okay. If you're framing up your story to be realistic
Mm-hmm.
and have the verisimilitude ranked to 99, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is reality. What's the story that's being told? The story is the drama of life, right?
Yeah.
You're a superhero. We're hand-waving what you do with a mask on.
Mm-hmm.
What we're talking about is going to and coming back from those adventures.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about here, and that's where realism steps in. There's going to be news reports about how your masked Avenger was seen at doing things and how the world feels about that. And this is going to be about you reacting to those situations in your personal lives. Mm-hmm. And then having to step from that personal life back to the mask. Like, that's realism at its core. But you're framing it for the players for what the story is, where it sits, how it's going to be harsh. We're in a game right now that technically has a very deep tonal point to that, and that is people can live forever because they have stacks. Their entire consciousness is in a chipset that gets uploaded and backed up.
Yep, and stuffed in the back of a manufactured body, and that's how your consciousness is there. And if your body gets obliterated somehow, that's fine. Just grab the chip, stuff it in a new body.
Yeah, not a big... Maybe a little system shock, but you'll be all right.
Sure,
Sure. You know, just don't think about it too hard. Okay, that is still something to register.
Yeah.
Of how is that handled?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then how is it handled when it's found out that the person doesn't have a stack?
Right. What is the value of a life when everyone is immortal? What is the value of life when most people are immortal, but some aren't?
But the thing is that the story? Is
right.
that the core of what we're talking about?
Yeah, it's part of the story. Yeah.
Right. And so these are the frameworks that come together when you're trying to figure out the consequences for actions and making sure that it sits within the stasis of that world to be able to express it and allow the players then to move within that level of escapism.
Yeah.
And their comforts within it.
Agreed.
So, because otherwise, murder hobos are going to murder hobo.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Not enough consequences, that's how you get murder hobos.
Yep. So,
all right, let's get to some of these questions.
We have
here.
a lot.
So the Mad Elf asks, if it's not part of the initial discussion, how do you effectively blend the two concepts in order to have realistic consequences that don't seem like railroads or punishments?
I would say the first step is context and setting that theme and tone with your players.
Yeah, I think you need to find what that baseline is first, and that baseline needs to be clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And after that, though, like...
Don't assume. I'm going to say this right now. Do not make the assumption that your players know. either by reading something.
No. I'm with you on that one. I'm
Yeah.
with you on that one. I'm
Yeah.
kind of moving past that though, because like
No.
To the whole part of like how do you make it not seem like railroading or punishment?
Right.
Okay, and I think the key to that is buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, railroading and punishment are both things you do to your players.
There you go.
Your players aren't an active participant in either of those things,
And they have
they
to
are
be.
just on the receiving end of them.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. A teacher punishes a student.
right. But like we're partners at the table in a collaborative storytelling experience here. Why am I railroading or punishing? Why would I ever do anything that you are not part of the discussion on?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I may say something to you to the effect of like, okay, you understand this is going to have some consequences, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if I start, you know, saying, okay, well, I think it's something like this, you might say to me, I'm not really comfortable with that. And that's part of the conversation of like, this isn't fun for me. Okay, I understand it's not fun for you. What do you think where do you think the story should go from here? You know, if this is something you're not comfortable with, you know, and just discuss it. I think some of the best consequences I've ever had have actually been player input.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, you failed a roll. What does that look like?
Yeah.
Steve especially.
Yep.
Brilliant on his feet of like, you tell me how your character screwed up and what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, I know exactly how I screwed up.
Yeah.
And with a grin on his face, tells me, it's like, okay, that's funny, that's entertaining, we're all part of it. And most importantly, that input came from you, so you don't feel like I'm screwing you over.
It's proportional. It
Yeah,
works.
exactly.
Yeah. And I think players do... I think your key to that, and the answer to Mad L's question at its core is you're not eliciting a punishment or railroading. You're not being the teacher or coach.
Yeah.
It is something that your player is actively part of.
And it is an evolution of the story.
Correct.
A consequence is just an evolution of the story.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. So
Nevim says, is character death the worst consequence for a player?
no.
I'm
gonna say no.
I'm of two minds on this one.
I think death as a release is a terrible way of saying it, but I think it's true. I think it'd be far worse to have a player who doesn't know what to do with their character because of punishments you put against them. It basically now they're
backing them into some sort, painting them into some sort of a corner, and now
Yeah.
they like, okay, your character's like in jail and wanted in every town, and it's like,
or even just the fact of like, hey, I used my skill this way. Yeah, you can't use that way anymore. Okay, well, like, this is what it's for. Yeah, you've been using it totally brokenly, so you can't use that anymore. You can't do that anymore.
yeah, the gods have decided that they're taking your powers away.
Right, so
But
now
I'm
they
a cleric,
still
so-
have to play the character
Mm-hmm.
because they want to continue it because the character's not dead and there's no reason for them to be dead, but now they have no way out of the situation,
Yeah.
no way to resolve it.
Yeah, that's probably a worse punishment.
I think that's way worse, in my opinion.
I was dragging my feet on it because death ends a story.
Yeah, but also, as far as consequences, makes it easy.
Though, yeah, entirely neutering them but leaving them alive in the story, that's arguably worse. Yeah.
Yeah. A player character thinks they owning the place and facing some authority figure, like a king or a queen. The authority figure gives them some warning about the dire consequences, imprisonment or death, which could happen if the character continues on the path of disregarding their authority. What consequences could the character face if they don't listen to the warning song?
I feel like if you have telegraphed the consequence, in as you describe it, they are mouthing off to someone who is a high authority. That high authority says, hey, you keep that up, I'm going to slap that mouth back shut and you're not going to like it. And then you continue to do it. I feel like you have given them ample warning to slap their mouth back shut. Now, on the other hand, you could go lighter with that, and have them be dismissed, taken away, escorted out, kicked out on their rump.
Yeah.
Okay? Not imprisoned, not killed.
Mm-hmm.
Seldom is that done. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Especially between large power discrepancies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If I, a commoner, am lipping off to a king, the king isn't necessarily going to have me killed. I am insignificant to the king.
Mm-hmm.
He's just going to throw me out.
Yeah.
He can ignore me.
Yeah.
I don't mean anything to him. I don't affect his day.
Yeah, I'm going to go right to the Emperor's New Groove,
Mm-hmm.
where Kuzco basically brings in Pacha, a common farmer, to give him advice, and then Pacha's like, whoa, you can't just do that. That's where I live. And he's just like, when I'm done, your little towny thing is going to be gone. So, bye, and
Right.
kicks him out.
Yep.
Like, just has his guards escort him out the door, because whatever, you know? But the concept is, like you stated, proportional to the station.
But I will say this, is that look for a proactive way to continue that story.
Mm-hmm.
If the players are intent on setting themselves against this powerful authority figure, okay, what is a proactive way we can move on with the story? Okay, sure, they've made an enemy of that one character, but they've probably made an ally of their enemies if they were in earshot to hear their opinions.
Yep.
So the sly advisor who is looking to usurp the king approaches them that night and goes, "Hey, noticed you had some opinions in court today, and that asshole of a king kicked you out. Wouldn't you love to see him get some comeuppance, huh?"
Yeah, there's a scene from, I want to say it was X-Men First Class, where Xavier is presenting the whole X Factor and mutants and stuff like that, and the conversation is not going well. They basically think he's a spy. He rolls really poorly on his charisma rolls.
Sure.
You know, his presentation rolls, and Mystique just stands up and clones one of them in the room, and they're all stunned. But the immediate response from them are, "Get them the hell out of here. I want them locked up," right? But sitting in the back of the room is someone who goes, "I got a facility. It's off-site. I'll take them." And he's interested. That's moving the story forward.
Yeah.
That's a response to that situation. That's what you just painted in a different light.
Yep.
So I 100% encourage that. Don't discourage your players if they're just being swarthy, and if it's one player and the rest of the group is like, "Shut the hell up, like you're gonna get us thrown out of here," sure, okay, that's one thing. Like if it's just them being kind of a jerk, it's a whole other thing when the whole group is into it, that they're just not into this whole like Richie thing, right? Setting up a single player for future story or villainy is fine, but make it proportional. Because that person, like you said, may not give two hoots who these people are.
Yeah. So last question by Nevin. How to turn and use consequences to drive forward the story and furthermore not feel as... Actually, we
just
literally...
did that.
I accidentally answered that question
You did.
for you.
You did.
Congratulations.
Yep.
I want to slip one in here. Actually, Knox in the live chat says, seems like we're talking a lot about whether the DM decides to punish the players or not. When do you just let the dice decide? So, I guess you let the dice decide when there's something left up to chance, right? Like, you don't roll dice unless there is an option of failure. I suppose you let the dice decide when, say, like, somebody wants to make a persuasion check to maybe minimize those consequences, or sweet talk the authority figure that's trying to levy consequences, but... Other than that, I don't really see a lot of dice play in action and consequence
100%
decision-making.
There is no... It upsets me greatly when a storyteller says, "Well, just roll some dice." Right? Just throws it out there willy-nilly, without a thought on whether or not this is a consequential moment.
Right.
That deserves a die roll.
Yeah.
Because it means something to the story. Because the real question is this meaningful to your character? Is it actually meaningful to their backstory, to their progress, their goals, their direction, or to the story? If the answer is no, dice should not hit the table.
Yeah.
right? If you're actively trying to influence somebody to push the plot forward, it is a scene, then that's what you're doing. That's an action. And it's going to have dice and actionable consequences.
Sure.
That are part of game mechanics. Beyond that, don't throw dice in the mix. You are asking for a problem as a storyteller.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you want is, oh, it's a punishment, and then they ace it.
Mm-hmm.
They just kick you in the teeth with dice. And now you have to react appropriately.
Or worse yet, you've got, like, and this happened in your 7th game, where it was like, we spent 3 game sessions stacking the deck, doing everything possible, and doing some really remarkable things.
Without a doubt.
To absolutely make sure that we had 100% success on this, and the dice just bit us.
Mm-hmm. And you all hated it.
We left it up to random chance, and it just tasted so sour.
Yep. You hated it.
Yep.
It was terrible. It was terrible. So, yeah, dice will make sour moments for one side or the other, and that will never be comfortable. So,
all right, so Philly Fan asks, do you have any tips for how to keep antagonists or threats relevant and active without your players feeling like they're always running out of time to combat them? I.e., I want to find out more about the High Society Tea, but the evil sorcerer terrorizing the other side of the continent needs to be dealt with first. Yeah, this is what I refer to as the Skyrim problem. Alduin is the dragons are coming back to life, and Alduin is going to devour the world at any moment. But also, you can build a house on the countryside and raise a family.
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, so if you're gonna play a game that involves doom clocks, let the players see the doom clocks early.
Yep. Let them know a doom clock is a thing.
And what the trigger is. You don't have to paint the entire trigger of telling them the truth behind it, but they do need to know that there are 8 events. There's 8 triggers, because as a player, they need to be able to move through that.
Yep.
Right? And if you say triggers happen based on events in the story, okay, great. So me going to do this high society thing isn't going to launch a trigger? No. Okay. Can we do that? Yeah, it's fine.
Yep.
Like, meta-wise, no problem.
And I think, first off, that's an active decision on you as a player. Like, your players are clearly interested in doing that. Do you think you should punish them for doing the thing that they're interested in going to have fun doing, with the consequences of, the villain just nuked a town off the side of the countryside because you guys were sipping tea at a ball? You know? No, maybe you can hold off on that. Maybe it's okay if they go to the high society thing and have some fun.
And don't have everyone at the high society thing being like, oh, the world is tragic, and you should be out doing something. What are you doing here?
The passive-aggressive of like, oh, the heroes are here and not saving the countryside.
Yeah, exactly.
How gracious we are to have them here. But what of those poor village? Okay, exactly. We get it. We get it. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So, yeah.
The other thing I would do too is maybe those two things can be conjoined. You know, okay, maybe they're not entirely separate things. Like, they go to the High Society Tea. Maybe if they accomplish some sort of a goal there, you know, maybe it's an opportunity for the social character to do a little rumor mill digging or whatever, you know, rubbing some elbows and getting some favors from some nobles or something. I don't know. But maybe there's an opportunity there for them to learn something about their foe, or maybe learn what their next target is, or what their weakness might be, or something like that, you know.
Meet an ex-lover or something like that.
The High Society Tea does not necessarily need to be disconnected.
Not at all. And in fact, it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, you know. So yeah, I think it's perfectly fine for you to just engage in that. Just let them have it. It's fine.
I see no difference with your players picking the scene that they want to go into and you readjusting where the Quantum Ogres sit.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all it is.
Exactly.
Oh,
he was going to destroy the town tomorrow? Okay, now it's going to be the day after tomorrow because you guys had something to do today. Well, it's fine.
Not only that, but it's like, oh, you were expecting them to get that information from the dock workers as they got on the ship, but instead they went to this high society thing? Maybe they're going to get it from the high society thing instead.
Yep.
Maybe it's the servants there.
Yep.
who are going to drop the note to them.
Yep.
They picked the location. The stuff settles into that position. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's the difference.
Just keep the story moving forward and keep it fun for everybody.
Yep. Keep moving forward.
Yep.
So we have a new Discord member.
I love this name.
Yeah,
Midnight Dreary.
Yes.
But it's MIDKNIGHT. Midnight Dreary. Do you think consequences should be bigger for more experienced role players?
No. I don't think they should be bigger or smaller. Because I often find that the more experienced role players create their own consequences.
I think that's true. Here's the thing. I don't think you should make the consequences bigger because they are a more experienced role player.
Correct.
Okay. You should make the consequences proportional to whatever it is you're making consequences for. Okay.
Yep. End of the story.
I would say you maybe want to leave a few guardrails and a little padding on inexperienced role players.
Yep.
Okay. Think of it less as making them bigger for more experienced, rather than making them lighter for less experienced.
Yep.
So that less experienced role players don't feel punished, they don't feel driven out, they have time to calibrate their reaction. Mm-hmm. We talk a bit about bleed, which is your personal feelings bleeding into your character and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Okay, a blurring of the line between character and player. Newer players are not going to deal with bleed very well.
No, they often... A lot of early role players and just early actors bleed hard. Yeah.
So if you give massive consequences to someone, to, I don't know, teach them a lesson or let them know that, they're not playing a kid's game of make-believe or whatever it is you're trying to do there, chances are you're just insulting the player.
Yeah.
You're just making the player not want to play the game and have fun.
Yeah, they probably will step away from role-playing altogether.
So I would say, make them light, make them fun, but make them understand that this was a consequence of an action. And then as they get more experienced and more comfortable, then you can start making them a little heavier.
Yep. Second question. Can you suggest ways to use in-game consequences to get my less RP-inclined players to RP more instead of just letting the other players do it? I think consequences are not the direction you should be taking to get your less RP players to RP more.
Agreed.
I think they will see it as a punishment directly.
You want 100% carrot, 0% stick.
Yeah.
It's not consequences you're looking for, it's incentives.
Yes.
It's enticement.
You need to lean into the things they're interested in.
Yeah, and also this is a bit of an out-of-game problem being solved with in-game
mechanics
problem here. I think if you've got people who aren't comfortable RPing at the table, I don't think that that's a thing you solve in-game.
Well, I'm going to say it is, in some ways.
By giving them opportunities to lean into their characters and stuff like that. I'm assuming, though, this is not an instance where they don't see an opening to get into the story, but rather they themselves are a timid person who does not feel comfortable role-playing under any circumstances at your table.
Because they're not part of the group, or they haven't done this before, or whatever.
Or they're just a socially anxious person, or they don't think very well on their feet,
all of those things.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. But I would say the first step is talking to that player and asking them... First off, making sure they're having fun. Mm-hmm. If they're not jumping in, is it because they're uncomfortable? Or is it because they're just happy people watching and being the quiet member of the group?
Yeah.
Or are they, are they just, eager to play but not quite sure?
Yeah.
You can approach all of these problems in different ways.
Yeah.
And, have that conversation with them and see what they're looking for in the game and see if you can provide it.
Yeah. And if you're trying to encourage someone to roleplay who's just not comfortable with acting or doesn't know what to do, there are a lot of different tools out there to kind of get them feeling on it. Like, for instance, prompt cards are a way to do it, where when they are in a mood, like, you can often ask a player, like, well, how are you feeling about this? Mm-hmm. How's your character feeling about this? Addressing them in their character is a big step of that.
Yeah.
But even if they're not sure, like, well, I think I'm depressed about this. Okay, but I don't know what I would do. You know what? I just happen to have a depression card. Mm-hmm. And in the depression card, like in Wander Home is a great example of it. If you're angry, you can do 2 of these things.
Yeah.
And literally there are notes for how to act.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that framework of helping someone be able to learn how to react outside of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not sure about who they are or about who this thing is that they're moving around on the table.
Talk it through.
Just give them opportunities without putting a spotlight on them at the table while everyone else is staring and forcing them to try and do something they're uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
It is never good to take someone to the water slide to the top of it and say, get on. Mm-hmm. And when they're like, I don't know if I want to. Well, you're already up here. Get on. Like,
right.
That is not how you get. Because at the end of that water slide, they are done.
Yep.
They did it once, and they don't want you. They did not have fun with it. It was not what they experienced.
And they know you didn't take no for an answer.
Correct.
Yep.
And now you've done wrong.
Yep.
Because we'll get back to this next month, but consent is important.
That sounds like a future topic.
Yes.
The last thing I would say too is that first follower is a very powerful thing.
It is
in situations like this, where you have other more experienced, more comfortable players at the table do the thing first, so that the players can see that it's okay, and see that there's no social repercussions for it, and whatnot. I think I've talked about it a little bit before,
yeah,
where. Sean is, he kind of does a bit of a British accent.
Sure.
And admittedly, it's not a great British accent, but it's what his character sounds like.
Sure.
And he talked to me about this one time. We were driving home in the car, and he was like, I feel really self-conscious about it. I'm like, don't, dude. I do voices all darn day, with my NPCs and stuff like that. Like, it's fun. Like, everybody at the table is enjoying that you're doing it. Like, nobody is there going like, Sean's not a professional voice actor. I think we should kick him out of the group. No, they're like, they know what Phalion sounds like, and
Correct.
he sounds like a snooty asshole because that's who he is, you know. And it reads perfectly for the character.
It's flawless.
Is it a great British accent? No, it's not going to win any awards whatsoever, but it's fun, and it adds to the net fun at the table, and so I told him keep doing that under pain of death.
He's not trying to mimic a specific individual and
exactly.
replicate something. He's created it whole cloth.
Exactly.
It's great. It's wonderful.
But
Continue
he does
doing
it. And I think that too, gives other players at the table permission to do. We've got some players who are inconsistent about their accents.
Sure.
Erica fades in and out of their accent
100%.
a bit, but I love it when you guys do that. It adds so much to the table. So I think having someone out there as a first follower, someone who is willing to take that little extra step and be like, I'll do an accent there, laddie. It's not my greatest accent, but I'll do it.
Yeah, it's something.
What the hell was that? Was that supposed to be Scottish? I think so. I don't know, but whatever. I'm having fun. I'm doing an accent,
Yep.
It's not a good accent, but it is an accent.
Yeah, I'm notorious for not doing accents as my character. I'm terrible. I'll do it as a storyteller, but I am terrible at being it as a character because I'm thinking too hard about the character. It's a terrible thing I do. But
there's something to be said about that. Actually, there's I actually heard some of the members of Critical Role talking about how they'll I think it was Taliesin Jaffe was talking about how he couldn't get the accent for Mollymock Tea Leaf correct. It was supposed to be an Irish accent, but he couldn't think and speak in if you give him a script, he can do an Irish accent, but he can't think and speak in an Irish accent at the same time.
Yep.
And so it was completely inconsistent while he was playing that character.
I think that's true for storytellers.
It is.
You really have to know what you're going to say to be able to say the thing differently.
And to wit, I have told you that there's only a couple nationalities I'm willing to play in 7th Sea for you because they're all the accents I can do.
Just off the cuff. Yeah. But you still have to think about it.
I can do a British accent, I can do a Russian accent, and I can do a French accent. That is all you get.
Yep. No, it's true. It's true. So I would say encourage it, and along with the first follower is when that first follower is doing things, they're also pulling at others when they see them in the concept of it, dancing with them. If they're starting to move around the table, if you will, doing their own little role play, that person is drawing them into those moments.
Yes.
And encourage that.
Encourage it. Yep.
Yep. I love it. So,
all right.
Next week, we
are talking a bit about the difference in characters between making characters for long campaigns and making characters for one-shots.
As well as, like, how you, as a storyteller, view those characters. Because are you going to go deep into their stories for a one-shot? Probably not. But if they've made them, you kind of got to do that for something longer. And how do you balance that?
Yeah,
where do you go with those
exactly.
things?
So we'll talk a bit about that next time. But in the meantime, you can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave, on Instagram at @ST_Conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. And join us up on Discord. We would love to hear from you. Drop some questions in there for us. Talk to the other great storytellers that are up there. Share some campaign ideas. Make a whole downloadable PDF for the rules system you just cooked up overnight, Hulavu. And you can find that link on our Twitter as well as our website, storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank our Patreon members who support us every single month, especially our name members, Knox in the Box, Sedjet, Arcane Asylum, Veteran, Hulavu, Sam, Sean, and Sparkle Motion. We appreciate all your support. Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. You can find them on Instagram or patreon.com as Arcane Anthems. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find it at geefrog.bandcamp.com. And the outro music, which you're hearing right now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Midair Machine. You can find them at freemusicarchive.org.
Big shout out as always to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thank you so much for loving and supporting us. All of our friends who sat at our tables over the years to give these great stories to share with you. And you, every single one of our listeners. We love you guys so much.
Love you guys all. Good night.
Good night.